All right, live on YouTube, we are recording. There we go, got it. All right, welcome back to another Crypto Vagabonds Q&A. First of all, Happy New Year. I think this is the first Q&A of the year. Thank you for being here. And today we're going to be talking about something which is not as talked about or as well, I'll say, spoken on the mainstream media. So we're going to talk about a subject which is a bit controversial, and that subject is nuclear energy. And contrary to most belief, nuclear energy is the safest energy on the planet, and I know most people do not agree with that, so just bear with me, and if you give me a chance, I'd like to be able to lay my argument. So here we are. As every content we produce, we need to pose a disclaimer. Nothing that we produce is to be seen as financial tax or legal advice. Everything we produce is for information, education, and entertainment purpose only. Just be aware that this crypto Q&A occurs, or this live on YouTube occurs every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. You also can interact with us on X, Instagram, and of course, for the time being, we're still in Clubhouse, migrating to Fanbase. So, as I said, we're going to be talking about something which is not spoken very much, and whenever it's spoken, the view is negative. And I'm trying to pose here to you guys the idea that nuclear energy is not dangerous. And the reason why I want to pose this is because you're talking constantly on green energy. And my view is if we do not add nuclear energy to the list of green energy, we're going to have a problem. We have seen Germany. Germany is the country that has gone to the furthest towards the green energy, but they also closed down their nuclear plants, and today they're burning coal. So this is me just asking you guys to think about it, the possibility of nuclear energy being added to the green energy. Otherwise, I think we're going to be into trouble. If you want to find out more about my views on green energy, I have a video on the channel, link for that on the description below. The roadmap of today, we're going to be talking about the dual nature of nuclear power. We're going to be talking about how nuclear reactors work. Of course, all very simplified because I only have 15 to 20 minutes. We're also going to be talking about innovations and challenges on the nuclear energy. We're going to be talking about a company called TerraPower, and no, has nothing to do with crypto, has to do only with nuclear power. And then we're going to talk about the public perception of nuclear. And then we're going to be talking about the role of government reluctance on this. I know it's a lot of points to cover, but we're going to be able to cover within the 15 to 20 minutes mark. So the duality of nuclear power. It is seen as both a destructive force and a potential savior of sustainable energy. As we know, it's the same energy that we use for an atomic bomb, it's the same energy that can be used to power hospitals, to power cities, and so on, to produce electricity. So that is the duality of the nuclear energy. It can be used militarily. For instance, a lot of aircraft carriers are powered by nuclear, and of course, they also have nuclear nukes on them. So it's used for military weapon purposes, but it's also a great source of energy. And the nuclear fission involves neutrons triggering a chain reaction, generating heat for electricity without CO2 emissions. And remember, the biggest enemy that we have on the road today is CO2, and that's why I'm proposing the idea that nuclear power can be added as green energy because it has no CO2 emissions, at least on the nuclear plant. We have CO2 emissions on the mining, but that's another story and a subject for another video. Now, the other problem that we have is radioactive materials, because you cannot extract all the power from the uranium. It's only a small percentage, or at least that's how it used to be before innovation came into the space of nuclear energy. So the byproduct is one of the greatest concerns because it's radioactive waste. What should we do with it? We're going to be having radioactive waste on Earth. Should we send that to the sun? It's very difficult to find out what to do with it. And of course, we have the human errors. We have the times where humans just made mistakes, and we had disasters such as Chernobyl. I think Chernobyl is one of the biggest disasters that we have in the nuclear energy history, and it was caused by human error. And of course, after that, we have very little innovation for over 25 years into this field. And of course, that is not true anymore because we have received innovation by one private entity and one person that decided to invest on this, which we're going to be covering a little bit further into this presentation. So one thing I want to invite you guys to think about it is, despite its risks, nuclear is a necessary alternative to fossil fuels. At least that's my view. And fossil fuels, by the way, is way more lethal than nuclear plants. I know when we think in terms of Chernobyl, we think about what happened in Japan, Fukushima, and we think, wow, nuclear plants are very dangerous. And the truth is they're not as dangerous. There's a lot more deaths being caused by fossil fuels, as I'm going to pose that to you guys here. So statistically speaking, nuclear energy has caused fewer deaths than coal. Just coal mining kills hundreds of thousands every year. But we don't know that because it happens somewhere else. It's not a disaster on the urban area. It's a disaster in some mining field. And of course, we don't account for the deaths of coal. So in comparison to coal, nuclear is super safe. And here's a graph that shows that. And this graph is made per terawatt hour. So each terawatt hour in coal or any other form of energy causes this amount of death. So for each terawatt hour of electricity production, we have almost 25 deaths by coal. We have 18 or almost 19 deaths for oil or petroleum. Natural gas, we have 3 deaths or 2.8. We have 4.6 deaths for biomass. And biomass, here's the thing. Biomass is a word that is a buzzword, and we do not know what that means. Biomass literally is trees being cut and burned while they're still green to produce electricity. And it's not that they're cut and burned where they're cut. This is the Amazon forest being cut, shipped across the Atlantic to provide electricity for countries such as Netherlands. So that's biomass. So 4.6 deaths, hydropower 1.3, and then you have wind, we have nuclear energy and solar. And you can see that nuclear, solar, and wind are green in terms of human lives, at least the amount of human lives that they claim. And you can see the greenhouse emissions are very significant when you compare solar, nuclear, and wind to everything else. Now, another thing that we don't add to that graph is this. Look how much you need of uranium to produce the same amount of electricity or energy as 3 barrels of petrol or 16,000 cubic feet, 13,000 cubic feet of natural gas. And the uranium pellet, just one, produce the same amount of energy as 3 barrels of petroleum or 17,000 cubic feet of gas. So the space is very small. There's a lot of energy in just one pellet. Now, of course, we have to deal with the perception and the fear. And for that, I use a metaphor, which is flying an airplane. Most people, they're petrified and afraid. Not most. Let's repeat that and go back. Some people are petrified and scared of flying on a plane. But guess what? Flying a plane is much less dangerous than driving a car or riding a motorcycle. So the public fear that we have is very disproportionate when you look at the actual numbers. Let's just look at this video so you can see what I mean.
Travelling by aeroplane is actually one of the safest modes of transport. Thousands of planes take off and land every day without a problem. That's why it's such big news when one does crash, because it's so rare. For every 3 million flights last year, there was only 1 recorded death. That means you're more likely to be struck by lightning than be in a plane crash. That's very rare though, as you only have a 1 in 300,000 chance of that happening. In fact, flying in a plane is even safer than travelling by car, something most of us do every day without anything going wrong. More than 1.3 million people around the world die in car accidents each year, compared to just over 500 in plane crashes. And even if a plane does crash, you're far more likely to live. A study found that 90% of aeroplane crashes can be survived.
So this is just some numbers so to see how we tend to be afraid of things that are not as deadly, at least not when you look at numbers, right? Now, I want to introduce you to Lowell Woods. I may be mispronouncing his name. And he's someone that is an astrophysicist and a prolific inventor who has significantly influenced the new innovations on nuclear energy. So now let's look at what it was and what it's being now. So most nuclear plants they operate today, they are still based on outdated designs, lacking modern computer-aided design, lacking algorithm to control things. Most of plants that is still operational today, they have old technology in the sense of not being computer run. Now, another thing that happened is those plants that operate today, they work with enriched uranium, and they can only extract a percentage of the energy of that uranium, producing a lot of waste. What most people may not know is that that waste is very difficult to find where to store and what to do with it, as I just mentioned earlier. And the new plants today, they have the possibility of exploiting that waste uranium, as you're going to see on the future slides. So another thing is the regular plants that operate today, they need to be refueled or change the uranium core every 18 to 24 months. On the best case scenario, 24 months. Also, we have the 2011 Fukushima disaster that shows how dangerous nuclear plants are because, of course, there was a tsunami and there was a storm and the reactor broke or there was a damage on the plant, and that was the most recent disaster we have in terms of nuclear plants. Now, those disasters were caused, of course, by natural causes, but of course, they have also an outdated cooling system. Most plants that we have working today, they cool themselves with water, and that cooling with water means they have a pressure cooker. If you guys live in South America or Latin America, you may know how a pressure cooker works. You boil water and you get too much pressure and eventually have a bomb. So the idea of using water as a cooling system for the power plant is an outdated idea. It always will result inescapably on a pressure cooker. This is not the way the new plants are being cooled. So the new designs that are happening now, they're designed and they're aimed to minimize human error and, of course, to contain the leak of radiation or the escape of radiation, as you can see here since 1996. Now, also, despite the new designs, we still have an outdated view. People think of the disasters, they think of the old plants, they don't consider the fact that the new designs may not have the same vulnerabilities or the same level of danger as the previous designs. Is the idea of, oh, something went wrong in the past, and the idea is we haven't done anything to fix it or there's no innovation. That's not true. There has been innovation, and those innovations do adjust the causes of the disasters in the past. So another reason is maybe because the one guy behind this innovation, the guy who is sponsoring and putting the money for that innovation is Bill Gates. Bill Gates has dedicated a lot of his time, or a good chunk of his time and money, to try to solve the problem of nuclear because he has a concern with climate change. Now, climate change being real or not is a subject for another video, but he believes it. He believes that there is such a thing as a climate change caused by CO2, and he sees this as a way to move forward. So that's why he's sponsoring this idea. Now, he founded a company called TerraPower in 2006, and the idea is to develop safer nuclear reactor designs. So the idea of this company is to see what can go wrong or what went wrong on the other power plants and make sure that they adjust those things. So after years of development, they created a reactor superior, not only in the terms of safety, but also in terms of efficiency. And one thing that to me is the most significant in terms of efficiency is the fact that he can use the waste material from the other power plants to extract power. Not to mention that it reduces the accidents caused by human mistakes because most everything is automated. So another thing is the reactor designed by this company or by Bill Gates sponsoring, it only needs to be refueled once every 10 years. Instead of like all the other plants needing to be refueled, let's say 5 to maybe 8 times within 10 years, this one only once every 10 years. Now, another thing that they adjust, which I think is really important, they do not use water to cool the reactor. They use liquid metal. Liquid metal absorbs a lot more heat and does not become a pressure cooker. So that to me was the biggest step, is moving in the right direction in terms of how can we dissipate this heat. And they use liquid metal and metal cooling systems instead of water as a cooling system. Now, of course, he also emphasized how his design is safe and also prevents the radioactive material leakage. Also, it diminishes the trash tremendously, because what happened is he's going to be operating with waste from other nuclear plants. But you have an idea, there's about 700,000 metric tons of nuclear waste accumulated globally by those power plants. Now, all of this waste will not be waste on these new nuclear plants. Now, the designs use depleted uranium instead of the enriched uranium, and of course, it reduces the risks that we have with enriching uranium, not to mention using the waste of the other plants. Just so you have an idea, just within the US, the waste that is already in the US soil is enough to power the US for the next 125 years if they decide to use these nuclear plants that has been innovated and adjust the dangers and the hazardous problems of the old ones. But of course, the biggest challenge still remains public perception. And we need to start a debate. We need to start to have a conversation about this. We cannot have the old view of nuclear plants and ignore the innovation if we want to go towards greener energy. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you guys is because I have made videos criticizing the green agenda. But to me, it's not enough to say what not to do. I want to say to you guys, what are the options? So because I'm aware of this, I'm researching this, I have also talked about uranium as an alternative investment for those who do not like cryptocurrencies and want to go traditional. This is not financial advice, but since 2014, I saw that uranium has been very low. And I think if this company takes up and we label nuclear energy green, I think there's a potential for uranium. And again, not financial advice, just something that I want to share with you guys. So we need to start a debate, because coal, as you guys saw, it kills more people than nuclear plants. Now, TerraPower was set to build a prototype and demonstrate the reactor's capabilities. But of course, some other things happen. So Bill Gates made a partnership with China. China was very interested on this technology. China is one of the countries that is opening and starting to have many nuclear plants operational. While Germany is shutting them down, China is building more. So Gates was having a partnership with China. But then, of course, things got complicated because of the tensions between the US and China. And these are one of the setbacks that I see when government interferes on the economy, because now the US is not using the Terra plant, but then it's also stopping countries that want to use. And of course, the investment gets stifled or gets paused. And I think we need to move towards nuclear energy and to innovate this technology and diminish the risks from the past. So the US has stopped this because of the tensions. And of course, those tensions between the US and China caused Bill Gates to cancel the deal that he had with China. So TerraPower continues to look for ways to implement this, and they still are aiming to build more advanced, safer nuclear reactor. And of course, it is much better than coal. For instance, Germany closed 17 to 20 nuclear reactors, and now they're burning coal. So a little recap. I hope I could do this in the 20 minutes. Now, I hope we cover well the dual nature of nuclear power. We gave a brief on how nuclear reactors work. I explained to you guys the innovations and challenges, talk about the company called TerraPower, and of course, talk about the public perception and show to you guys how, at least one example on how the government reluctance is stopping this innovation. And I think we need to move in that direction. Now, with this, if you want to find out more about these kinds of things and how to enter the crypto space or investment, do consider joining the Academy. That way, you're going to be in better control of your money. Link for that on the description below. And with this, I ask you, if you got value from this video, please do like, subscribe, click the notification bell, so you'll be notified the next time I make a video. And with this, I wrap this video and I go for the Q&A for you guys. I hope this was news for you guys, and I hope this was not on the radar. So any questions regarding anything? I decided to start the year with a nuclear bomb, so Russ got a joke. Go ahead, Colin.
No, I was just wondering, yeah, if anyone knew like deeply about this. Just curious about that. Marcus has a question, maybe.
Go for it,
No,
Marcus.
I have a statement. So yesterday I heard somebody for the first time referencing World War III that it's going to continue. It doesn't say the start of World War III, that it will continue. I don't hear many people use World War III as a terminology anymore. I hear the eventual World War III. So with this, why do you say that the world is in World War III as opposed because of the geopolitical chessboard, or because the number of the number of conflicts? Because in the past we have had the same amount of conflicts going on in the world. So I'm very curious to see, because this nuclear ties into that. So as yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So the reason why I call World War III is this. Let's talk about World War II, right? World War II, and I could be wrong, but I see as a conflict between ideologies, right? There was the capitalist view versus the communist view, and those two crashes, right? And we saw that conflict. And then, of course, I would say we had a period of Cold War as well. And then in the 90s, we had the Berlin Wall collapse, and we thought, okay, the war of ideologies are over, capitalism won, and we had a period of peace. Even though we're only two different ideologies fighting, we had many countries involved. I think depends on how you count, had between 25 to 30 some countries involved on that conflict, right? Now, what I see is the theory that we have moved from the war or a conflict between ideologies, and now I think we have the same countries representing different ideologies, but I think we see now a conflict between nations. And mostly we see between the West and the East, right? We see a huge conflict, let's say, between China, which is also communist, and the US. And even though it seems to be not connected, if you see the conflict of Ukraine and Russia, it's a conflict between the West and the East, Russia being on the East and Ukraine wanting to go to the West side of the ledger, right? When you look at the Israel conflict, again, is a conflict with nations. And I'll say, again, we have the situation between the West and the East, because the East is supporting the Muslims and the West is supporting Israel and the Jewish people. And if you look at the conflict between China and Taiwan, the same thing. It's a conflict between not ideologies, but the East and the West. So the root cause or the main cause or the common cause between those conflicts are still the same. And we're not calling World War III, but we have the same amount of countries involved in those conflicts, if not higher than the amount of countries involved on the World War II. Does it make sense, Marcus?
It does. But then we're eliminating some countries from the global conflict, or what would be called the World War III, right? I we look at the ideologies. You just mentioned, let's go to China and the US. You just mentioned Bill Gates has a partnership with China, right? So in his interest, will he what side does he go on, right? Bill Gates is a businessman. He's not going to want the war between China and the US. And when we look at the amount of US companies that are in China, I have a very hard time seeing that the war gets to be how do I say that maybe it is just a psychological war for a very long time, kind of like the Cold War, right? I don't that's I'm trying to think about why would business interests, because they would need to leave China immediately. They would have to.
or
They just
not.
wouldn't,
I
or they
mean,
would have to side with China, correct? Right? They would have
no,
to.
look, I think I don't know, I could be wrong. I haven't been alive for any like of the major wars on the planet, right? As an
Me neither.
investor, I don't care about war, right? So for instance, and I want to say something that's going to sound really horrible here. If I have a deal that I'm going to supply XYZ to a Chinese client, I don't care about the war. I care if my client is going to pay me for the service and the product I'm providing. As long as my client is honoring his end of the deal and I'm honoring my end of the deal, I don't care about the war. And we have a Chinese, Marcus, we have a Chinese possible client, right? And if there's a war, what do we care, right? We
No,
care that he
I
honors
don't
it.
care. But someone like Bill Gates is somebody that I see in a very different light in terms of how his operations geopolitically, right? Bill Gates, we have to say, affects markets. Does he not? I mean, we cannot say that. We cannot. I see
He's a
Bill
whale,
Gates as a
right?
different.
He moves
Yes,
market,
he's a
yeah.
exactly. And so that is why I'm asking this question, because um follow the money. The money is still in China. As you said, Bill Gates has a partnership with China. He could, would he continue that conflict? Would he continue that? I don't know. I'm struggling to articulate what I'm thinking, which is um geopolitically, it just doesn't, in his position, it's a very strange situation. Let me leave it at that. Maybe I'll have to talk about this in Clubhouse. I think it's a very strange position for him to be in.
I think it is strange because of him being on US soil and how the US intervention works. But I would say, like, as an investor, myself, as a capitalist, I would say the best approach is I need to develop my product. There's a client that's paying for the product. I want to sell the product. End of story, right? That would be the end of story, like in terms of game theory and interest. Now, that would be different if Bill Gates was providing weapons, right? I mean, his plants work not with enriched uranium. So by not working with enriched uranium already shows that there's no weaponing possibility, or like there's no, as you say in Portuguese, there's no bellic use for what he's offering, right? There's no possibility of this becoming a weapon. The closest thing to a weapon, okay, China is going to have cheaper and more efficient energy, and they can produce weapons with that. But in a direct form, I don't see how providing a more efficient nuclear plant is providing weapons to the enemy. Does it make sense, Marcus?
It does. It does. I mean, it's very similar to the Rothschild situation and the ascent of money. They'll fund both sides of the war, right? It's what's ever profitable. Hey, you want to buy weapons? You want to buy guns? I'm not interested in who's killing who. I'm interested in supplying. Period. Um, I I I come now to um like now I move to the different climate. I go to the different possible conflicts. So we obviously have that conflict. So do you consider that the other conflicts let me ask it this way. What are the conflicts that are World War III? It's not Guyana, Venezuela, for example. That is not one of the conflicts, right? It's that would not be. It's not okay. It's
Not yet.
that's okay.
Not yet. It could be, right? It could become. I would say from the World War III view, Guyana and Venezuela is the least one in terms of World War III. However, the British send their ships, right, to help Guyana, right? If Brazil gets involved, and Brazil gets, and one thing that Venezuela, I think a lot of people here may not know, the troops of Iran, they have food in Venezuela. Wagner Group have their boots in Venezuela. Russia have their boots in Venezuela. So if Venezuela going to conflict, Iran is in that conflict, the Wagner Group is in that conflict, whatever name they may have it now, Russia is in that conflict, and the British ship already came there and the US already there. So it's still a conflict that can potentially be a conflict between the two nations, right? The East and the West, not in terms of ideology, but in terms of nations. Now, the reason why I see that the most distant is because it's the least likely to escalate in terms of all the other conflicts in comparison to other conflicts. But if that escalates, I would say we still have the potential of that becoming the East versus the West, Marcus. Does it make sense?
It does. So okay, I'll let somebody else ask some questions. I have a few more from the geopolitical side, but I'll ask. Let's see if there's some other people have some questions.
But I have a question for you and for the audience. Did you guys know that the Iranian troops are in Venezuela and have been there for a while? So has the Wagner Group and Russian troops.
I did not know. I know about the Wagner Group in Venezuela. I did not know about the Iranian troops, but it doesn't surprise me because do you recall several months ago when Iranian ships were docking in Brazilian ports? I mean, okay? You know, I've arrived next door. I'll just make my way right further north. I had no surprise by that. That's I think that is a I'm laughing because you made the comment yesterday in Clubhouse about BRICS doesn't even have the headquarters. We just say BRICS to say BRICS, but what is happening is that there are relationships with these countries that are happening now. Maybe Lula says we need to have nuclear capabilities, and that's why I need to have a relationship with Iran.
Yeah.
I cannot otherwise think about that. But what I do know, beyond what we're talking about, is that Iran has significantly more interest in Latin America than just Venezuela and in Brazil.
Yes.
So Bolivia is another country. Iran has interest there. No surprise, Nicaragua, another country that has interest, right? So I think that is so I have to figure out and think what is the play. Most Latin American countries are very weak on nuclear energy, very weak. So this creates a tremendous question to be asked.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So just to add, just to add, like the Iranian troops have been in Venezuela for a long time, and it's nothing new. Like I know it's new that I mentioned this, but they have been there, I think, for decades now. So it's like, so is the Wagner Group, the Russians, they have been like in Venezuela for a very long time. It's just coming to light now because the possibility of conflict, but they have been there for a long time. Yeah. And I think Latin America, with exception of Argentina, is mostly going towards the break side of the communist or the east side of the ledger, though.
Except for Uruguay and Paraguay, I think the major countries.
Yes,
Uruguay, Paraguay,
Uruguay, Paraguay, and Argentina, yeah. And Argentina now with Milei continues, yeah.
That was one of maybe our predictions. Would they form a bloc? It would make sense. The three countries are very close. I don't know if that will happen, but of course Uruguay could go in the wrong direction. I posted that's one of the elections that's coming up this year. So we have many elections coming.
That's one thing we should talk about, Marcus. I think is the year that was going to have most election globally, huh?
Yeah, I think El Salvador, February. Panama, and we're not talking about Panama, but the canal is another point of conflict, which is possible for World War III. Dominican Republic, maybe not affecting a lot of people. Mexico is in June, and then Uruguay is in October. So there are
Wow.
there are some that would affect Bitcoin, some that would affect geopolitics. With Panama, for me, being the most important, followed by Mexico, because the Panama Canal has issues that are still going on, and so um, I don't know if we go ahead.
No, I just want to like bring light to people like the Panama Canal. I don't like that it's called a canal, but it is a name that has and the reason why I don't want to call it, I don't like this call a canal because it doesn't shine light on the fact that it is not a canal. The boats have to be elevated to a lake. They have to cross a lake of fresh water and then have to be lowered on salt water again, regardless of which side. And what happened is each time that happens, they're draining water from that lake. So in periods of drought, the canal is not working. And when most people hear of canal, they think of, okay, we tear the ground and then it's the same level on this side, the same level on the other side, and it's just crossing. For instance, there's not enough drought to close the Suez Canal because it is just connecting two bodies of water and then the ships can go. But in the case of the Panama Canal, it is actually a lake that the boats have to be elevated, they have to cross and they have to lower. And another thing that I'm not sure if you guys are following, it has been for a while now on the Belt and Road Initiative, there's the Colombian Canal. I don't know if you're familiar with the Colombian Canal here, guys. I can see by the face that it's also something new for people here.
No, I'm only familiar with the Nicaragua discussion, and China is still having discussion that they were going to do that. I did not know about a Colombia canal. No, did not
There
know
has
about
been
that.
a project for a Colombian canal since 2005. China will be sponsoring, and the idea of the Colombian Canal is to tear the ground so that the two oceans can connect and that there's no problem with drought. That has been conversations with China since 2005 that I know of.
I knew that that was like a discussion, but I didn't know because they were also in discussion about the Nicaragua canal too. And even recently, as of December, that was oh, we go back to Iran. Why was Iran in Nicaragua? And China has been working very hard to strengthen a relationship in Nicaragua. And when we think about this, Nicaragua for me is a communist country. It's maybe it's extreme socialist to communist, right? But you know that China and Nicaragua launched a free trade agreement. I don't, this just happened, right? At the beginning of this year. And so Ortega, is they China or Nicaragua stopped diplomatic relations with Taiwan and opted for China. So that's geopolitically that's should be the way that to open the door for the canal. So you now have Chinese boats that are coming in on both sides of Nicaragua, and then will they allow them ultimately to build a canal there? So I don't know. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
So
Cora and Mia, make a note there. I want to talk about two things in the future because I also have the idea of North Korea threatening the US. I want to make a video, the most difficult country to attack, like geographically speaking, the most privileged location of all countries. But I also want to talk about maybe give some details on the Panama Canal and how that affects the economy because the Suez Canal is already being blocked by Houthis and this conflict with the Middle East. But I also want people to understand that what happens if there's a drought, which we had a drought last year, and also a briefing, like geopolitics of the Panama Canal and the history of the Panama Canal, because I think most people are not aware of how the whole thing started. It used to be an American territory, now has been given to the Panamanian and still not really there. So we can discuss more about that and how that affects the world market. And if China builds another canal besides the Panama Canal, then that will change, will be competition for the world though. The problem with Nicaragua Canal, it will be the same thing as a lake. They're going to try to flood the lake.
The Colombian Canal is Colombia, or
It is in Colombia. The idea is, let me show you here. Let me see if I can share a map.
because I think I knew about another canal closer to China.
No, these are not close to China. This is being sponsored by China, right? So let me show the map here. I'm gonna map and share my screen with you guys. Let me know when you can see it.
We can.
So the Panama Canal is here, right in Panama. So the idea was to connect the ocean here. See? This is a bit swamp, you can see. The idea was to tear
that's
the
Darien. That's the Darien Gap.
yeah. This is the idea for the Colombian Canal. Okay.
Okay.
Does that make sense? And the Panama Canal, let me see if I can find that.
You are right there. Yep, that's
Yeah.
Panama City going to Colón is the Panama Canal.
Yeah. One thing most people don't understand, like Panama City is actually on the other side, right? It's not on the Atlantic side. So
Yes.
Colón, yeah. So this is the lake, the Catiun Lake. They flooded. They made a dam and flooded the lake. And they cannot flood much more because they flood the lake too much. They flood the entire country. But then boats get elevated here. They navigate into this lake and then they get lower on the other side. I think it's, to me, it's the greatest piece of art of modern like civilization. The construction of this is it's just a piece of art, the way they build it. So the idea now is, I think China was considering to tear here and get to Jurado with the Colombian Canal. And if that occurs here and it's not in a case of elevation like the Panama, then this canal is going to be just like the Suez Canal, just go through without having to be elevated, you know. And also there's another idea, which is the Nicaragua Canal. Let's see if I can find that here. If I'm not mistaken, the Nicaragua Canal, the idea is here. We should cut through here, get to this lake, and go to the other side. That's the idea for Nicaragua.
And
The
the
issue, what?
like you said, that it is possible that in Panama the country goes down.
So what happened in Panama is, okay, so Panama is one of the very few flat, like very flat. It's a swamp. Panama is a swamp. Like, so this is all swamp area, right? So if they flood this lake much higher, the waters will go to other areas, like much more. Like, I think there's like over 30% of the country will be flooded if they just increase by, I don't know, 2 meters the level of this, because they made a dam. Because there's a few rivers that made the Gatun Lake available, right? And if they increase the level of the water much more, they will be flooding more areas of Panama. And that would be a problem. So they're on the very limit of how much they can flood without taking vast territory, because all of this is swamp and flat for most part. Does it make sense, Goran?
Mhm. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. It's like Netherlands. I don't know if you guys saw it, like Netherlands was less than half meter from being flooded. Like half of the country just because of the rain. When you have a very flat country, what happens is when the water goes up a little bit, it goes in every direction.
I was just
All right.
asking because I saw that there is like that canal that is on Malaysia, so they really need it. Like it's really China really needs that canal, and they
Which canal? Goran?
on Malaysia.
I don't know about the Malaysian canal. Do you know that, Marcus? Now you're learning from Cora. Let me see.
No, no. If I'm not a very good expert in the my focus has always been kind of the Africa and Latin America, but please tell us. Tell us more a little bit about it.
So what I saw is basically I'm gonna share the screen that I'm talking about this area here. You know that China really needs this space here to trade and to
Yeah,
export stuff. And but they don't wanna like depend on that. So they want to
Cora,
create a canal
I'm
over
sending you a
here.
link. I'm sending you a link with the proposal for the canal. Look there. I send you a link to you now.
Sir?
You can just I send you a link with the actual illustration where you want to put the canal.
Okay, thank you.
You can share that, yeah.
Where did you send
On
it?
the chat here. I can put
I-
on Signal. Hold on. I can put it on Signal. There you go. You have it. There you go.
Yes.
You can share that.
So yeah, so it's basically that they don't want to depend on this part here. So they want to create
Singapore.
in the Gulf of Thailand.
Mm.
That is what I wanted to mention.
Wow. That's nice. That would be a good.
Yeah,
I'm not
because
sure if
they're
it's worth it, but it is
what why not?
because the distance that they have to go that they would avoid in terms of distance, I'm not sure if it's worth like the Suez Canal makes sense because it adds like 8 to 10 days of the tour to the
This?
boats instead of yeah. So when you look at this, the Panama Canal, the same thing. You have to go all the way to South America. I'm not sure if that distance would be because see, talking about here in terms of kilometers, we're talking about maybe let's see, 1,000 kilometers down. You can see 0 to 500 kilometers in terms of scale. So it would be helpful, of course, but I'm not sure if justifies the distance that you are saving, on the route.
I think it's not because of the distance.
It's because of Singapore and
Yes.
Indonesia, yeah.
Yes, and this yeah, but also I think it doesn't make much sense because they are still here close to Vietnam, the other islands.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much the same, but I'm not completely aware of the
That's a good
geopolitical
idea. I can
things.
see.
But that's it.
Okay.
Is
Learn
this
something
what
new now.
the name?
Right close to the hour. I think Ilya got her microphone. Leave out to join us. Ross, Georgi. Any more questions, guy, for the first nuclear bomb of the year? If not, we can call it a day. Dun, 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 dun. Marcus?
No, good discussion.
All right.
Some
So then
homework to do. Thank you.
okay.
Thank you both. Good presentation.
Thank you. No, you made the presentation, so I need to give credit where credit is due. So
You presented the presentation.
I present the presentation, I give the roadmap, but the execution of the images and layout of everything is Cora one. She's the one that does the presentation. So thank you, Cora.
Thank you.
Yeah. Did I present it well, or I need to? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate you all. Thank you, guys. Happy New
Bye.
Year.
Happy New Year.
Great.
Bye now.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Bye-bye.